1929. The Port of Liverpool. Dock workers stood along the quay, staring out at the water. A steam locomotive had just been unloaded from a ship. An enormous thing, weighing somewhere between 80 and 100 tons. The problem was simple. This locomotive had to be moved inland for repairs. But how? Horse-drawn wagons? Impossible. Not with 100 tons. Ordinary trucks. In those days, a truck could haul maybe 5 to 10 tons at most. This load was 10 times that. Laying down temporary railroad tracks. Too expensive, too slow, not practical. And then, it appeared. Something emerged from the fog. It was a vehicle, but it didn't look like one. It was the Scammell 100-tonner. People froze when they saw it. This wasn't a truck. It looked more like a building that had decided to move. The tires were nearly as tall as a man. The engine roared like a wild animal. And underneath, fully exposed, huge steel chains were turning, like a bicycle chain, only as thick as your wrist. Modern semi-trucks use drive shafts. They use gears. They use hydraulic systems. But in 1929, there was only chain drive. Raw steel, pure mechanics. And this machine lifted a locomotive onto its back as if it weighed nothing at all. Slowly it began moving, rolling from the Liverpool docks toward the city center. On the railroads, the Union Pacific big boy locomotives were the ultimate giants. 600 tons of steel, 7,000 horsepower. The biggest monsters ever to run on rails. The Scammell 100-tonner was the road-going version of that idea. Smaller, but for its time just as unthinkable. Only 2 were ever built. The first was made for Marston Road Services in Liverpool, designed to haul steam locomotives from the docks. The second, according to records, went to another heavy haulage company. But the details have been lost to time. Today, neither one survives. All that remains are a handful of photographs, a few newspaper articles, and a legend history quietly erased. Under this video, you'll see a subscribe button, a small action with a big meaning. By pressing it, you're not only supporting the creation of more content like this, but you're also becoming part of the very exchange we've been talking about. Giving and receiving in harmony. It's not about the size of the action, it's about the meaning. A simple subscription tells me these words reached you. It tells me that the effort, the late nights, and the discipline to bring this message forward matter to someone on the other side of the screen. To understand the Scammell 100-tonner, you have to understand one thing first. This machine was not about speed. It was about torque, just like the Shea locomotive. In the 1880s, Ephraim Shea faced a serious problem. Timber in the forest was rotting because standard trains couldn't climb into the mountains to haul it out. Conventional locomotives were built for speed, straight tracks, high velocity, low torque. Shea did the opposite. Low speed, high torque. His locomotives used gears instead of simple drive rods. They were painfully slow, but they were unstoppable. They could climb grades of 10% where other trains simply slipped and failed. The Scammell 100-tonner followed the exact same philosophy. Torque instead of speed, power instead of elegance, and the secret was the chains. Modern trucks connect the engine to the wheels with drive shafts, a solid metal shaft that spins to transmit power. But drive shafts have a weakness. They break. Under a 100 tons load, shafts bend. They crack. They fail. Scammell's engineers knew this, so they chose a different solution. Chains, like bicycle chains, but enormous. The engine turns. The chains rotate. The wheels move. So why were chains better? First, flexibility. Drive shafts are rigid. When overloaded, they snap. Chains can flex. They can absorb stress. Second, power distribution. Chains spread the load evenly instead of concentrating it in one place. Third, durability. Even under 100 tons, they didn't break. But there was a price: noise. When the Scammell 100-tonner was working, the chains clattered and steel ground against steel. It wasn't graceful, but it worked. The engine, a 7.1-liter gasoline motor. By modern standards, small, but the torque was enormous. The gearbox was geared so low that with every engine revolution, the wheels moved only a few inches. The result? Top speed, 6 miles per hour. Walking speed, But the pulling power? Enough to lift and haul 100 tons. Drivers used to joke, if you chained a Scammell to a wall, it would tear the wall down and still keep pulling. But controlling that power was another matter, because the Scammell 100-tonner could not be operated by one man alone. It required two. Up front was the driver. He controlled the engine and steered the front wheels. At the rear sat the steersman, perched on the trailer, gripping a massive steering wheel. Why? Because to turn a 100-ton load, the rear wheels had to steer as well. Modern trucks steer only with the front wheels. The rear wheels stay fixed, but under a 100-ton load, that simply doesn't work. You can't make turns with front steering alone. So Scammell designed something revolutionary for its time: rear wheel steering. At the back of the trailer there was a seat, a steering wheel, and a man sitting out in the open. The driver would sound the horn. Beep, beep. Turn right. The steersman would turn his wheel. The rear wheels would pivot, and the trailer would ease through the corner. It looked like a circus act, and it came with serious problems. Problem 1, no communication. There were no radios, no phones, only horns and hand signals. On a noisy road, in the middle of a turn, communication was nearly impossible. Problem 2, no visibility. The steersman couldn't see forward. He was behind the massive load. The driver couldn't see the rear. He was up in the cab. One mistake, and 100 tons of steel could end up inside a building. Problem 3, the weather. The steersman sat completely exposed. In rain, in snow, in wind. In winter he froze. In summer he baked. But the job had to be done. There was no alternative, much like the firemen on a steam locomotive, shoveling coal in brutal heat just to keep the engine alive. The Scammell steersman was the fireman of the modern road. The most common question people ask about the Scammell 100-tonner is simple. Why was it so slow? The answer is just as simple: because it didn't need to be fast. The Mallard locomotive was built for speed, 126 miles per hour, a world record. But speed came at a cost. Bearings overheated, pistons cracked. The Scammell 100-tonner was the opposite: speed, 6 miles per hour, walking pace, but durability, practically unlimited. Slow movement reduces mechanical stress. Think about it. Drive a car at 120 miles per hour and everything vibrates. The engine strains. The brakes overheat. At 6 miles per hour, everything is calm. The Scammell 100-tonner could run for days without stopping. Hauling a load from Liverpool to London takes a modern truck 3 or 4 hours. With a Scammell, it took a week. But at the time, there was no other choice. Who else could move a 100-ton locomotive? No one. Only Scammell. So customers waited. Days, weeks, because what they were buying was certainty. Modern trucks are fast but fragile. Under extreme loads, they fail. The Scammell did not. As one engineer put it, to stop a Scammell, you have to take it apart, and it refuses to come apart. So what finally ended the Scammell 100-tonner? Technology. Throughout the 1930s, Scammell ruled the world of heavy haulage. But by the 1940s, the world had changed. Hydraulic systems arrived. What was hydraulics? A way of transmitting power using fluid pressure. Hydraulic pumps replaced chains. Hydraulic pistons replaced mechanical gears. The result? Lighter, more efficient, easier to control, and most importantly, one man could operate it. There was no longer any need for a steersman sitting out back. Hydraulics allowed all the wheels to be controlled from the driver's cab. Scammell saw the future and adapted. In the 1940s, the Scammell Pioneer was introduced. No more chains, a Gardner diesel engine, 102 horsepower, modern by the standards of the time. During World War II, the Pioneer hauled tanks, 30-ton Matildas, Churchill tanks. A total of 459 were built. But the 100-tonner? It was buried by history. Only 2 had ever been made, and both were scrapped, because they were no longer needed. Hydraulics had changed everything. Just as diesel engines killed steam locomotives, just as modular trailers replaced fixed trailers, progress was ruthless. Today, not a single Scammell 100-tonner survives. Both are gone. most likely cut apart for scrap, melted down, reused as raw metal. What remains? A few photographs, a handful of newspaper articles, and a legend. Just like Union Pacific's AC-9 locomotives, 167 were built, and only one survives today sitting in a museum. Just like the Burley T-100, 4 were built, and only one remains, the Scammell 100-tonner. 0 survivors. But its influence, that lived on. 1940s, the Pioneer, a tank transporter. 1960s, the Contractor, a heavy hauler with a 335 horsepower Cummins engine. 1968, the Crusader, a long-haul truck. All of them were born from the same philosophy: power, durability, torque. All of them were descendants of the Scammell 100-tonner. Today, modern heavy-haul trucks can carry 200 to 300 tons. Mammoet vehicles, Goldhofer modular trailers, all hydraulic, all computer-controlled. But at their core, the same idea: move the impossible load. And the first machine to truly make that idea real was the Scammell 100-tonner in 1929, with chains, with raw power. The Scammell 100-tonner is a paradox. Only 2 were built. It worked for just a few years, and none survived. But its story, unforgettable, because it represented an era, the age before hydraulics, before computers, the age of pure mechanics. Back then, engineers trusted only 3 things: steel, chains, human intelligence. And with just those 3, they moved 100 tons. The Scammell 100-tonner teaches us this: technology always advances, but principles remain. And the principle was power. The power they achieved with chains in 1929 is achieved today with hydraulics. The goal is the same: to move the impossible. Sometimes the most primitive solutions are the strongest. Scammell used chains. Modern trucks use hydraulics. Which is better? Hydraulics. Which is more impressive? The chains. Because chains were pure mechanics. No electronics, no computers, just steel and willpower. And sometimes, the greatest machines are the least remembered. Big boy locomotives, 25 still survive. The Scammell 100-tonner, none. Why? Because Big Boy became a symbol, an icon of American power. Scammell was just a tool, a working machine. No one thought to put it in a museum, because it was just a truck. But it was far more than that. It was an engineering victory. Imagine 1929, the port of Liverpool. Early morning, a steam locomotive sits motionless on the ground, 100 tons of dead weight, helpless. Then, the sound of an engine, deep, powerful. The Scammell 100-tonner approaches. Chains clatter. Steel strikes steel. The dock workers stare. This is impossible, they say. The roads can't handle this. But the Scammell doesn't stop. The locomotive is loaded. The trailer is secured. The engine roars, and slowly, very slowly, it begins to move. 6 miles per hour. Walking speed. But it cannot be stopped, because the Scammell 100-tonner was power itself. Pure, raw, mechanical power. No hydraulics, no computers, just steel and chains. And with them, it moved the world. Today, not a single Scammell 100-tonner remains, but inside every modern heavy-haul truck, its spirit lives on. Whenever you hear chains clatter, remember Scammell. Whenever an impossible load is moved, remember Scammell, because it was the first. Scammell 100-tonner. The roads couldn't handle it, but it carried a locomotive, with chains, with raw power, and it never came back.